Guests, welcome the first day and second session of the LivenArch conference. We are happy to see you, at least on Zoom. I'm Associate Professor Dr. Serap OZTURK from Karadeniz Technical University, Department of Architecture. And now I'm opening the criticism and method session with four presenters with their presentation. Now two of our speakers are absent now, but maybe we can join in later. After present our four presentation, we have a discussion part. We will receive your valuable contributions from the Q&A table below on your Zoom screen and over our YouTube channel. And also want to remember that we are streaming on live on YouTube now. Let's go on one by one, and we will discuss all of the presentations. Our first presentation topic is New Media as a Regenerative Tool in Architectural Studies by Nuran IRAPOGLU, Hande Gülecoğlu, and Busra YAZICI. I think Nuran IRAPOGLU will present the paper, or Hande Gül. Which one?
Hande.
Okay, Hande Gül from Artvin University. The floor is yours.
Hi. Hi, my name is Hande. We prepared this study with my colleagues Nuran IRAPOGLU and Busra YAZICI. Our topic is New Media as a Regenerative Tool in Architectural Studies. I'm making the presentation for all of us. I'm going to fast so as not to exceed 7 minutes for presentation. Maybe you can read and check on the conference paper or book. Social media, which has provided a research area and tool for many disciplines in recent years, also provides an environment for discipline of architecture as a representation of virtual space and human behavior. Architecture can contribute to architectural education, theory, and practice by considering the social media field as a space production, design environment, and data collection area. Our study emerged from the question of how the relation of the discipline of architecture with social media tools are reproduced, and which social media tools and methodical approaches these developments involved. This research was conducted using the quantitative research method, and the data was collected and analyzed with a bibliometric approach. We collect data from the Scopus database. We filtered articles published in the Scopus database between 2010 and July 2023 by using the keywords YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter. Together with the term architecture, we limited the scope of the research to social sciences, art and humanities, and we include only publication in English. We analyzed 51 studies in total. We checked titles and abstracts, removed irrelevant ones, and determined relevance. If there was a weak relationship between the title and abstract, we read the introduction and conclusion section in detail to determine their relevance. We reached consensus by discussing unrelated articles and created the final dataset. The data analysis technique of our study is based on bibliometric mapping analysis. The analysis of the research is presented by the bibliometric analysis method, and secondly, by the bibliographic mapping method. Finally, we discuss the topics and methods of the article. We analyze the topics we created bibliometric analysis data regarding publication year, publication type, and related graphics. We visualized bibliographic maps of data obtained from the Scopus database using the WOS-Weaver program. We included network visualization and density visualization analysis created in WOS-Weaver program. Findings of our study according to bibliometric analysis. Figure 1, number of articles according to years. Figure 2, publications type. Figure 3, number of articles according to social media tools that we choose them. Bibliographic mapping findings of our study. Figure 4, co-author links indicating collaboration between authors. You can see there are no links to collaborating authors. Figure 5, most frequently used keyword links. 169 keywords were identified. We can see social media, Instagram, architecture, photography, cultural heritage, and sustainability have big size, means they have a strong link. I have to speed up. I'm skipping some slides. Figure 9, the density map of publications according to the countries. Figure 10, the density map of citations according to the countries. Figure 11, citations and documents by country. Figure 12, bibliographic match analysis of documents. Figure 13, bibliographic matching links of authors. Figure 14, links between co-cited authors. Last part is analyzing the data according to their subjects and methods. Figure 15, word cloud of subjects. Figure 15, word cloud of research methods. Conclusion of our study, I said very briefly. The study shows that social media studies on architecture and its visuality are more common. However, experimental studies also deal with social media tools as learning environments. Social media tools have regenerated the environment and scope of scientific studies to be carried out in architecture in the context of subjects, methods, and techniques. This study has revealed the potential of the field of study with an overview of media studies in architecture. In addition to Scopus, studies on databases such as WOS, which offer data analysis with WOS-Weaver or Kohe Archive, TOPDAGI databases can be included in the scope of the research, and data sources that will offer a more extensive perspective can be expanded. Our references. Thank you for listening.
Dear LivenArch VIII organizing committee and participants, I'm honored to stand before you.
Thank you for your exciting presentation. And the paper deals with one of the most popular areas these days, social media. Thank you for your contribution again. And our second presentation topic is powers control over the spaces of the Hatskol series by Ceren Yıldırım Yargıcı, Mekselina Gececi, Isıl Çokuğraş, Bağdatlıoğlu. I think Ceren Yıldırım Yargıcı will present the paper. The floor is yours.
Thank you. We are presenting together with the Mekselina. Hi, I'm Ceren YILDIRIM. I'm PhD candidate at Yıldız Technical University.
Hi, I'm Mekselina. I'm PhD candidate at Yıldız Technical University and research assistant at Ceren University. Our research title covers control over the spaces of the Haskell series. The main approach of this paper is that space cannot be treated as a purely physical production, diverse from all kinds of individual and social practices. In a parallel perspective, Lefebvre and Castells describe space as a material product of particular social formation. According to this approach, space can be accepted as a political indicator of power relations that are changed and regenerated both on a global and local scale. According to Bordeaux and Soya, the political organization of space means the structuring of human space interaction to fulfill political functions. While the ideologies of power become visible through space, they also produce control systems over space. Power organizes space by separating various social classes outside the hegemonic one and forbidding their contacts. Surveillance systems has targeted urban life in general and the potential for new forms of social relations to emerge out. Released on Netflix in 2022 and based on Afshin's novel, Haskell series is a significant example of the representation of the changing power relations over space. In the series, following the worldwide outbreak of acquired reasoning deficiency syndrome, anti-epidemic institution established in Turkey. The institution has become the sole power in the country in a short time. To maintain its position of power, the institution has obstructed all scientific research aimed at acquiring immunity against the virus.
In this series, the relationship between power and space most prominently becomes evident within the urban context. The institution has created enclosed zones by dividing the city with massive walls. They have made secure zones where the risk of disease is minimized by isolating infected bodies in quarantine areas. So here it can be argued that power legitimized its control over space by utilizing the knowledge of the disease. According to the story, the institution took its first steps towards control by weakening social bonds and restricting spaces. The authority does not consider the sick people as humans and made efforts to shape public perception in the same way. This situation illustrates how the authority's spatial arrangements and communication tools can influence society's perceptions and behaviors. Due to these regional closures, the morphology of the city undergoes change, as we can see through the city panoramas. The Galata Bridge has its abandoned look here, and the streets of the city can be seen as the most prominent areas of this transformation, and the institution reinforces the city-wide warning system with visual materials. As another example of the change in the city, the iconic Galata Tower is depicted with its receivers, and it shows the loss of tourism activities here. And similarly, in the Galata and Karaköy districts, which are historically commercial areas for the centuries, all the shops have their shutters down, we see. And all these observations reflect the societal and economic consequences of changing power dynamics within urban spaces. And power utilizes architecture to make itself visible and convey messages. The institution is constructing a monumental scale laboratory within the city, and it is believed that this structure will announce its efforts to end the pandemic to the public. And the institution buildings also stands out with its monumental, symmetrical, and colossal dimensions. And the director of the series also expressed that a brutalist architectural approach was adopted for the design of the building, and it is described as oppressive to humans. Enclosure practices have become widespread in daily spaces. In a supermarket, when a case of illness is detected, employees can activate the emergency button to immediately get computers and lock down the person. And also there is a character does not want to be separated from his sick wife and child. and he keeps them under observation with security cameras in a closed room. In the laboratory, patients are kept in soundproof glass cabins. We see the security of the areas is constantly increased. The institution building has advanced technological security systems that requires presentation of an ID card, verbal interview test. People who can't access the technology, they are developing other practices. For example, there is a password system between the main character and his mother to determine whether the house is safe or not. There are also examples such as verbal codes and riddles, and people and groups who are marginalized against the control of the authority, as the Sarto suggests, they develop strategies and take advantage of moments of partial weakening of power.
The concept that space is organized by power to fulfill its political function is notably evident in mechanism of power depicted in the Haskell series. The institution's division of the city into regions and thereby creating a homogeneous and controllable community constitutes just one of the special contracts aimed at sustaining their own authority. Haskell series dystopian atmosphere manifests itself both in urban and growth spaces. The institution's excessive control over space and daily life can be seen in all special practices. The institution's presence is felt all over the space through various mechanisms of surveillance. Not only is the city divided and in a private space is controlled all the time, but the society is disciplined, marginalizing those who question authority. Established with the aim of combating the pandemic, the institution emerged as a power that creates a spectrum of space from the public to private. The institution exercises authority over these spaces in order to maintain its rule and archive its political objectives. The legitimizing factor of the institution's pervasive power of control across various scales is the pandemic itself. Consequently, when the Haskell series is examined through the lens of the relationship between power and space, it becomes possible to discern the intertwined coexistence of space with sociality and its potential for mutual regeneration. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your presentation too. We listened a reading on the narrative of Istanbul through the representational tools of cinema. I think it's a very exciting paper. Thank you for your contribution again. And now our third presentation topic is Discovering Umbra-Structure, Exploring the Psychosomatic Extension of Architecture by Ozlem DEMIRKAN, Aysenur TELLI, and Busra YILMAZ ERDOGAN. I think Ozlem Hocam will present. Okay, the floor is yours. We are listening.
Dear LivenArch VIII Organizing Committee and participants, I'm honored to stand before you today as a speaker at this prestigious conference. It's a privilege for me to be part. Over the next several minutes, I will share with you some insights and perspectives on context and architectural pedagogy, a topic that holds great significance in today's education programs. The objective of this study is to analyze the role of context in architectural education. An experimental study was conducted with second-year architecture students to achieve this goal. The study involved altering the context and distorting the students' connection to a particular place. They were then asked to creating a structure that could be incorporated into their body while conveying an emotional expression. The experimental study aimed to assess the sensory and artistic reflexes of architecture students following trauma. The study consists of 4 sections. The first part, introduction, the second part, conceptual framework, the third part, method, and the fourth part, analysis. What happens if it is a wall of architectural elements which is live, not in space, but where it is articulated? How is the space defined? if feeling becomes a structure composed of imaginatively expressive architectural elements? What if the architect proposes the laws and the designer's emotions and body serve as the context? What is the design itself? How does the emotional state of the designer affect the design? What if the location became the body's context? What happens if the architectural form completely defies gravity? In addition to the pandemic, two major earthquakes, hundreds of aftershocks that hit Turkey on February, are the reasons for the alterations to the context within the scope of the study. A forcing study promotes a critical and curious approach to architectural education and eliminate the barriers that prevent students from braving out, expressing their emotions plainly and designing. This paper presents the results of a preliminary investigation carried out among the students of the Department of Architecture in the aftermath of the earthquake. Context is one of the most essential characteristics that differentiate architecture from art. Context is a concept that establishes the relationship of an element with the other elements, refers to the integrity that makes sense of the coexistence of elements, determines the connection of many unequal situations with the general, and enables the thought of individual entities. When considering the historical, definitive, ontological, and epistemological aspects, the concept of context arises as a defining factor in architecture. It shapes the form and is continuously shaped by the user experience. However, the question remains, why do architects require context? What happens if the context is differentiated and inverted? The experiment requires students to collaboratively design a model that represents their psychological state, incorporating their bodies as an integrated component, such as the limb, while considering basic design principles. Before commencing the design process, the project coordinators instructed participants to select words that express their psychological mood. The formal counterparts of these words were the structures that assimilate into their bodies and synchronize with their movements. The user body is location, and context are emotion. Students worked on concepts with words and phrases reflecting their psychology. Students worked with sketches and models to visualize their designs based on their concepts. These are the adjective pairs by YILMAZ and Isıl, which are about the visual effect of form in architectural design. These adjectives evaluated quantitatively in the article were handled qualitatively in this research. Out of 19 adjective pairs, 13 were selected as appropriate, and 2 adjectives suitable for the definition of Umbra-Structure were added. These pairs of adjectives and the reasons for the selection are given in Table 1. We prepared 2 tables to describe and evaluate projects. The first table aims to introduce the projects, Umbra-Structure and context in detail. In this context, the ID information, photographs, sketches of the project, and the words that the students started with while preparing the project are part of the table. Information about Umbra-Structures and articulation style are also part. The study focused on analyzing the utilization of metaphor, analogies, stylization to assess these conceptual tools' role in conveying abstract thoughts and emotions inside design projects. The present analysis focuses on how students alter the visual impact of design, specifically exploring how they remove and reverse the conventional influence of context on location. The students made lexical choices while attempting to analyze the relationships among semantics, adjective usage, and metaphorical expressions. Their metaphor analogy. We analyze the relationships among lexical semantics, adjectival usage, and metaphorical expressions. You can see here the evaluation of the project according to the adjectives. These adjectives are simple, complex, dynamic, stagnant, strong, weak, balanced, unbalanced, harmonic, unharmonic, full, empty, ornate, simple, original, populist, free, restricted, dominant, resolved, traceable, forgotten, animated, immobile, hard, and soft. This table contains a cognitive mapping of the relationship between emotions, adjectives, and forms. You can see very clearly the adjectives, for example, unbalanced, emotional, weak, dynamic, immobile. In lieu of conclusion, this study aims to improve architecture students' design reflects following trauma. Instead of seeking definite and unchangeable results, the study wants to start a discussion about the context in architecture. The emotions identified by the research are negative. However, they attempted to mix these negative emotions with positive ones. They articulated using all body parts, shoulder, head, back, foot, hand, midsection. They attempt to sterilize the object they employed as a metaphor. Students attempt to convey their emotions through color. Darker colors represent negative emotions, while a range of hues represents positive emotions. Negative emotions such as anguish and burden are evoked by rigid forms, whereas words with soft forms evoke positive emotion. Furthermore, the design of the sharp uniforms emphasizes the body. These students projected their negative emotions onto organs where they experienced discomfort. When the burden of the context on the ground is reduced, observed that the students' relationship with form and body form diversified. The words adopted as context and chosen by themselves contributed to the formal and semantic depth of the visual meaning. This study will highlight an evidence of the sensory aspects of architecture. These are the references, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ozlem Hocam, for your presentation. I think the paper asks an interesting question, the surveyed architectural education process. Thank you again for your contribution. And our last presentation topic is Graeco-Latin squares and the Knight's Tour in George Perec's Life, A User's Manual and Architecture by Aysenur TELLI. Aysenur Hocam, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello and thank you. I am Aysenur TELLI, an architecture graduate and an architecture master's student from Eskişehir Osman Gazi University. This research was based on mathematical constraints and their possible uses in generating or regenerating architectural designs. And I chose to use George Perec's novel, Life, A User's Manual, and its use of the Graeco-Latin squares and the Knight's Tour as a guide. This is a book that was written using multiple mathematical constraints. It is also deeply architectural in nature. It's a 99-chapter novel about an apartment and its residents. Each chapter is named after a resident or a part of the apartment, and the section drawing of the apartment is actually provided at the end of the book. The novel's chapter order is seemingly random. For example, the entrance hall 1 being chapter 22, while the entrance hall 2 being chapter 19. But by turning the section drawing into a 10 by 10 grid, we can see that it does follow an order, specifically a Knight's Tour pattern. The Knight's Tour is a knight touring a chessboard, visiting every square once and only once. In cryptology, the Knight's Tour is used to conceal or reveal information. Inspired by that, we could potentially use it to generate new information from pre-existing. This is a visual example of it, which uses a king's movement as it is more simple. To experiment, first a 6x6 36 color gradient image was scrambled using a 6x6 Knight's Tour, which ended up losing its gradient effect. Then the same image was scrambled using the same Knight's Tour, but from a different starting point, which ended up having the same color order, but from a different starting point. It was also hard to see the similarity at a first glance. Then the same image was scrambled using a different Knight's Tour, which resulted in something that is almost completely different. Then the scrambled image result from the very first experiment was scrambled again, using the same Knight's Tour, which had no similarities with the original image or the previously scrambled image. Then the test image was changed into a simple floor plan, which shared the symmetrical qualities of the Knight's Tour itself, and this plan was also scrambled. Then the resulting scrambled plan was tested against its mirrored self, but only half, to see if it retained its symmetrical qualities, and it did not. Then it was also scrambled with another night's tour compared with the previous results, and they again shared almost no similarities. The section and the planar wall architectural representations are two-dimensional, and so is the night's tour. But two different papers about the night's tour on the three-dimensional chessboard exist, and they each approach the third dimension movement differently. This could have a lot of potential for further research. Now, inside the novel's chapters, there are elements like some objects, references, actions, etc., that appear and reappear in a way that is seemingly random. The Latin square is an n-by-n arrangement of n elements that each appear n times, in which no element repeats across a row or a column. The Graeco-Latin square is basically two of these superimposed. The book uses 21 Graeco-Latin squares and 42 lists of 10 elements, so each square gets two lists, to determine which elements will be present in each of its 99 chapters. This is just an example of one square and the two lists associated with it. A hyper-Graeco-Latin square is n number of Latin squares superimposed. For example, a three-dimensional hyper-Graeco-Latin square is simply three Latin squares stacked. By using the dimensions of the hyper-Graeco-Latin square as literal dimensions and assigning each letter a dimension, we can create differently sized volumes. These volumes, when moved together in one axis or the other, start and end at the same point, thanks to the characteristics of the hyper-Graeco-Latin squares. However, attempting to move them in both axes at the same time can cause them interfere with each other. Now, a possible hyper-Graeco-Latin cube composed of multiple hyper-Graeco-Latin squares stacked on top of each other could be possible, but research did not prove or deny its existence. If possible, could create more possibilities and potentials for the design process. Now, the results were visually and characteristically different from the original designs and the constraints and the other results. And they were all seemingly random, while they were not. These constraints can be used to generate designs from nothing or generate pre-existing designs in new ways. The regeneration carries clues and pieces of the previous design while still being unique. Exactly how useful these specific constraints would be for real-world built architecture is not yet known. However, there is proof that we need to experiment with constraints within architectural design. And that was it. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Aysenur Hocam. I think George Perec offers very valuable contributions to the field of architecture with his different reading methods. I follow your university exercise on Perec in social media, and your paper has a close connection with architecture, I think. Congratulations. Thank you again. And now we complete our presentations. Thank you very much, all of you, again, for extending the conference theme re and degenerations in architecture. And let me look at the Q&A part. Is there any question for our speakers? No, maybe we can stay a couple of minutes in times. Can I ask a question?
I want to ask a question.
Yes, Ozlem Hocam, please.
Miss Yıldırım and Gececi. I think similar in some way, but perhaps it's only the way that they show us. they want to show us. It's limited, I think. How do you identify Istanbul as a movie character? That is my question.
I can say some few words, I guess. If we speak of the narrative of the Istanbul through the series, it is possible to say that it stands out more in the city panoramas. In fact, in the book, it's originally a book. In the book, this narrative is mostly made through certain district names, and we do not hear this verbally in the series actually. But of course, we can detect where it is from the city symbols. And for example, it was interesting to see the Galata region lifeless. And in this sense, there are some choices made based on the book, and there are also choices that are related to the logistic, I guess. And in summary, of course, an Istanbul narrative can be examined, but we can say that the series is more useful for examining power relations on a smaller scale. Thank you for asking. I can basically answer like that, but
thank you. And I want to add something more. I think the most powerful novel about Istanbul is Istanbul Bir Masaldı from Mario Levi. We see movies on the fiction side of Istanbul, but in novels we can see the lived side of Istanbul maybe. Thank you for seeing Istanbul in a way that we can see. You show us. And I'm a lecturer for 5 years, maybe the architecture and cinema. So I give lectures to my students, and I have some articles about this section. Maybe some cities are a part of my subject. So thank you for this presentation.
thank you for your words.
Thank you, Ozlem Hocam, for your contribution and question. And I want to ask you a question, Ozlem Hocam, for your paper. I think most of us as educators were actually interested in your paper. Can you explain the relationship between the body and emotion a bit more through students' example? I mean, what kind of feedback did you get? Or were you able to observe its positive contribution to architectural learning in the next terms or the future?
Sorry. It's a key project. The first part of a big project that for 40 weeks it takes, and we study with my colleagues the parasite architecture. So we give the results to parasite architecture. This is the beginning of the parasite architecture, and in the study we change the context. What is context? Context is location, I think. We give a place to students and ask them to try something, to build a form or to create a concept maybe, but we change these things, the context, location, or context as emotion. First they shocked, and they think that how we identify ourselves, maybe they think like that. And I saw really they try to make something. They think about the structure and they linked it with context. I think this is the first. This is the important thing for us to achieve. Maybe some confusing things about their head, their minds. Because this is an untraditional way to learn, to teach architecture to students. But then I see that they like the way we do the education. So it moves with their body, and they show it to all school in university campus. They travel with the structures, and this is the umbra of their emotional state. So I think this is the first, and this is the important thing for us to achieve. Yeah.
Thank you for your answer. Different ways actually give us a perspective to learn the same thing. I mean, again and again. Thank you for your team and you for the presentation. And now look at the Q&A tab. There is no question. So we complete the session. Thank you again for your contributions. We have a break now in the program. Hope to meet again in the next LivenArch conference in person. And bye. Have a nice day.
Thank you.